if you want to be VC, it's not about finance. You're not sitting with Excel and calculating how much, the P&L will work or not. You're trying to figure out, who is the entrepreneur, especially when it's early stage investments. Like you're working with people. So the product is not really important back then. It's to see if the entrepreneur itself is a good captain for the ship. And if he can take you from A to B, and if you're trusting him, when you're going on the sea, you don't know what's the weather or, the big waves or not big waves or what will happen. So the most important thing, if you believe him, that he is the guy who will be able to take this ship from A to B.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by Shays Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, and hello, Shay Michel, General Partner of Merlin Ventures and Managing Partner of toDay Ventures. Shay is a serial entrepreneur who has founded 4 companies in the CDN and IT world, and for the last 5 years has been the Managing Partner of toDay Ventures, an Israeli seed stage fund. In December of 2020, he joined Merlin Ventures to stand up and run its efforts in Tel Aviv. Shay Michel, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me today. There's way too much for us to talk about, all the way from your upbringing to cybersecurity to investments to the Israeli ecosystem. I'm excited to just dive deep and get to know you better over these 20 minutes. So let's get started. Shay, walk me through a little bit about your background. And I want to go all the way back to Turkey. Share with me a little bit about, how big of a part does Turkey play for you, besides for the fact that you speak Turkish, but what is it, with you in Turkey, and how does it play into your work today?
So I grew up in Israel. I born in Israel, but in 1990, my family just decided to make a relocation and to go to Turkey. So 7.5 years old, moving to Turkey. And as you can understand, I didn't know any Turkish or anything close to that. So that's the start. Like, I remember us landing to Turkey, and that was the first time I saw ice and snow. That was amazing. And the smell of the burning wood of the heaters at houses. So that's my first memory, from Turkey. I don't know how much you know Turkey, but
not nearly enough, except for the fact that I might go there to do a hair transplant sometime this next year.
By the way, I know Cesar, Mehmet, anyone that just ping me, and I will try to help you with that. So Turkey, for someone from coming to Israel back in the 90s, to Turkey is like going back 50 years. Going back there, and it's a different type of culture. Is moving to an old culture, Muslim culture, where the discipline is foremost, the most important thing, and the people are very different from what I used to in Israel. So it's 180 degrees different from what I used to here in Israel, and that's how we started. That's a big change. It's not from moving to Tel Aviv to New York or another country, where the culture is maybe similar, but it's a huge change to move to a Muslim country. But today when I'm looking back, I think that it was good because I got some things that some cultural things that I couldn't get here in Israel, like discipline, the protocols to learn of human behaving. Like Turkish people are giving for human life and human behavior a very big respect. So this respect is something that I miss here in Israel, but that's something good that I got from there. So you can choose to look to the bad things, but we choose to look mostly to the good things that we got there. A good childhood, a bit different, but I think that's what made me today.
I love it, and honestly, I don't know many people that relocated to Turkey, and obviously you speak fluent Turkish. today. And so I'm sure that it's an interesting, a journey to constantly be looking at these two cultures and being this, global kid growing up and having those two. Tell me a little bit about, what you do today, but more importantly than today, you've invested in some incredible companies. You're deep into the Israel ecosystem here, into the cyber ecosystem. Tell me a little bit about, your career pathway and what were some of the big milestones along the way that really led you to your conviction of how you told me right before we got started that you simply love what you do?
So, maybe it starts when I came back to Israel. Back then, November 2003, I decided to come back to Israel. I was studying finance in Turkey. Uh, it was important to make an army. Like when you're living in the Gola, outside of Israel, and as an Israeli, one of the things that you want to do is to do army. So I came to Israel to make my army, my service. After I made a service, I thought that I would come back. And then I fell in love with the Israeli culture and the army, the people that I met there. And I decided to stay. And, if you want to stay as a Khayal Boded, you need to be Boded after it too. So I decided to stay here and I started working in El Al. So I started, to fly over the world. I think that this
Wow.
was one of my best decision. People was laughing in the beginning. You're a flight attendant, and that's what you do. But I think that was my best decision ever because
Incredible.
in these years you are flying all over the world, learning lots of cultures. And back when I flew there and I saw the people, in the airplane and talking to people, I understand that I love to work with people and to help. And I said I want to work in something that I will help the people. And then, while working, I started to study. I met my first partner there, Danielle, where we started together playground. And years after, working with startups, doing startup by myself, I got the opportunity to work with my partner Ronnie at Incode, where we started to work with cybersecurity companies back then in 2013. And that was when it all started. We met Cyber in their early stages, Luminet in their early stages. Those are the legacy companies who made the Israeli startup scene, and
Right.
and we knew the entrepreneurs. And then I met some great VCs where they said, if you were investing 50K in each startup that you work with, probably will be one of the best VCs in Israel. And that's how the VC idea came to life. And then we started toDay, and today we're doing Merlin in Israel. So I never planned to be VC, or I never
Right.
planned to be investor. That's where life brought me.
I love it. Can you take me back to this transition from flight attendant into the high tech ecosystem? How does that work?
So flight attendant wasn't work for me. Like it was more a hobby, and a way to make money and travel the world. I knew that I wanted to do different thing, and while I studied while I was flying. So I learned and I tried to do the best. So while we were learning and making the startup, I understand that I love the technology. Back then, I'm talking about 2005, where we started, to think about what is the next big thing. Back then, there was eBay, so we started on selling, stuff on eBay, and then we were
Amazing.
frustrated. We frustrated because we didn't understand how to sell on eBay. Well, it wasn't so easy back then, selling on eBay. So we started there, and then we started to become smarter. We started to say, where we are selling. Let's find out what are the best sellers, and we started to create Playground, and that's how I fell in love with tech. And I learned the cloud. Back then it wasn't cloud, but it was CDN world, and that's how I fell in love on cloud. I learned a lot about Akamai, Uyala, Brightcove. In 2009, we founded Sparkio. It's another startup where we try to bring education online from CDNs for 5 years, together with my partner Frederick. So you're not getting in love with startups. I think that's life, where it brings you in the end. I think I just went with life, and that's where it brings me.
Now, what did you learn about yourself, either during as a flight attendant in Turkey, in the CDN and IT space, then in the cybersecurity space? So what do you learn about Shay throughout those different experiences, whether it's you as a professional, as a thinker, as a leader?
So first of all, I learned that I'm determined when I want something. So each time I saw someone successful, I was asking myself what he's doing and how I can be there. And I think that one of the things that are part of my beliefs is luck is difficult to control. So I prefer to pave my own path with determination.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's the life. That's what I understand about myself. That I like to control what I do, and not leaving it to something else. So that's what I learned about myself. That I can do anything. If I just want, and if you work really hard and determination.
Right. Now, as you're entering, the VC space from entrepreneurship and different industries that are not, in the high tech scene, what do you experience? A lot of people come into the VC space, either because they're really into the financial part of it, or they're really into, just being there, a part of growing a bunch of different companies. What was it that really got you excited, being an investor of these companies?
So if you want to work in VC, you need to love people. Like, it's all about people. It's all about, helping and, understand, what their needs. So, I think it's not a new news that there's lots of money out there. So, and I think that mostly people working with people. So if you want to be VC, it's not about finance. You're not sitting with Excel and calculating how much, the P&L will work or not. You're trying to figure out, who is the entrepreneur, especially when it's early stage investments. Like, you're working with people, so the product is not really important back then. It's to see if the entrepreneur itself is a good captain for the ship, and if he can take you from A to B, and if you're trusting him, you know, when you're going on the sea, you don't know what's the weather, or the big waves or not big waves, or what will happen. So the most important thing, if you believe him, that he is the guy who will be able to take this ship from A to B, and you do it by loving people, by trusting them, and by learning them. So I think that the most important thing, if you want to be VC, is to love people, and to want to help them in the right way.
Right. Now, let's move more to the cyber scene. I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about, cybersecurity from your lenses. Not coming there from necessarily the military background or that sort of thing, from a different perspective, and then a little bit about what you're doing with Merlin today.
So 2013, we are starting to learn more about the cybersecurity space. Most of the startups name back then was cyber something, and but something else happened there. It's the cloud. And while the cloud evolved, and the cloud becomes something affordable. I remind you, back at 2009, 2008, if you want to buy, terabyte on the cloud, it was costing lots of money. With the big change in the cloud, and the affordable prices of the cloud, technology companies and all the companies become software oriented. So when enterprises made the switch from buying technologies to starting to produce their own technologies, a new thing become very popular: cybersecurity. Today, when you're walking to a flower shop, or you just want to buy a wine, you're not walking to a shop or a store. You're just clicking
Right.
the domain, going to the website, and buying a wine. So that means that this company, or using outsourced company to develop their technology, their software, or those companies like GetTaxi, Flower.com, and other companies that were groceries online today, are software-based companies. It's not the grocery that we used to have when we were a child. So having said that, we understand that. Having said that, we understand that every company today is a software company. And when every company is software, you need to secure your systems. So today, in 2021, everything is about cyber. And I think that we're just starting. Everyone thought that it will end by now, but I think that, everything is starting now. It's the beginning. It's a new era of cyber.
I love it. And, obviously there's a lot of conversation happening around cyber, a lot of words being thrown around like bubble and some sorts, but I couldn't agree more. And I think that we're just getting started. And as the world is becoming more and more digitalized, and what we've been seeing in the last year and a half, or even 2 years with the pandemic, and the world literally digitalizing itself at an exponential rate, cybersecurity is going to play just a bigger part than we could have ever imagined, and a much more accelerated piece. Tell me a little bit about Merlin.
So I met Merlin nearly 4 years ago. I met David, in a nice hotel in Rothschild, back there in the cafe, talking about what we are thinking about cybersecurity, and just what I told you about the new era and the toads. And David founded Merlin, David Phelps, 25 years ago, where he understood that in the end everyone will be software based and everyone will need to secure their systems. So he founded Merlin Cyber, and since then it's a huge company in the US. Today they're selling Netscope and other huge companies in a multi-million-dollar deals. They just published a new deal that they did for hundreds of $1,000,000. So knowing this big company, and David, and he invested in toDay, in our first VC and the second VC back then as a LP. And then we said, why we're not doing it together? Why we are not creating, a VC just for cybersecurity, Israeli based, as I like, it's important the money will come to Israel and investing here in Israel. And also we're the cyber nation, not just a startup nation. So and we started with the Merlin, and that's where we decided together with Seth Spergel to create Merlin Ventures in Tel Aviv.
Incredible. And so, Shay, I want to use the last couple minutes just to dig a little bit deeper about your background and your personality. And I want you to take me back to your childhood. Really, what fascinated you as a kid? What really sparked your curiosity?
Whoa, my mom used to say that I'm asking too much questions. Like I think that everything is about, I wanted to learn everything. I was even my wife today saying, you're asking lots of questions. Like, I really want to know everything. And what fascinated me, as you remember, like growing up in Turkey, it's interesting, I had this conversation with our team here in Tel Aviv, is they're asking, how is growing in Turkey? Said, it's very interesting. Like, while the kids here in Israel did some great things, in Turkey, things were different. So the childhood was, interesting, let's say. Being a Jewish, together with 3,000 Muslims in the university was challenging, or, being in the class, the only Jewish. So I think that connected me more to the Israel. And that was the reason also I wanted to come to the army. And I think that's also the reason that, that I do what I do today. Like, everything is the love to the country. So childhood fascinating things are, I always wanted to understand the world, how life's. And I think that I have some romantic view about life. I'm falling in love with lots of things, about, from nature and stuff like this. So I really like to travel and see the world. And yeah, and I think that's the point of my childhood. Like, growing up in a Muslim country just raised the need, for the Israeli love and to travel. In Turkey we couldn't travel so much.
And if there's a few words that anyone would use to describe Shay, or that you would use to describe yourself, what would those be?
Warm-hearted, motivated, determined. I think those are the things that probably describe you mostly.
I love
me
it.
as a person.
Shay, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. This was a great pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michel, for having me, and thank you.
Toda rabba.
Bye-bye.